As you probably know by now, that there are massive protests in Ukraine in multiple cities over Zelensky signing a bill today. And the Kyiv Post has just come out and put out this scathing editorial. Zelensky just betrayed Ukraine's democracy and everyone fighting for it. And so I'm going to show you that. And then I'm going to show you what Zelensky said himself. And we'll look at his words and compare with the editorial. And then you can make up your mind about what's going on. I'm just trying to provide the facts so that you can understand what's happening. Okay, let's start with this, with the Kyiv Post, which is all in for Ukraine, as are most Ukrainians, as you would think is Zelensky. And so what are they talking about? Zelensky just betrayed Ukraine's democracy. Last week, we warned of a coming anti-democratic backslide. Now we see it happening, they say. A parliamentary vote led by President Volodymyr Zelensky's lawmakers today took away the independence of Ukraine's anti-corruption bodies, National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU, and Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, SAPO. Zelensky signed it into law the same day. I thought he had to wait a day, but maybe they don't. The Prosecutor General, a notoriously non-independent figure, will now oversee anti-corruption investigations in a complete overturn of the system that was set up to be independent from other law enforcement bodies. Okay, so what we know is that the NABU and the SAPO will be moved from being independent into under the prosecutor, who is under the president. So that's the line of authority. They're not being disbanded, as I understand. They are just being moved to a different place within the system, but that could open up potential corruption. Like, I mean, like if you were trying to be corrupt, you'd want to do that. That doesn't mean that they will be corrupt. It's like in order to run the vacuum, you need to plug it in and turn it on, but that doesn't mean that because you plugged it in, it's on, right? It's that kind of thing. Okay. In reality, it means that Zelensky's office will be able to stop investigations with a phone call. Well, theoretically, yes. We don't know that that is going to happen or that has happened. The move isn't an isolated incident, but part of a massive crackdown. The vote in Parliament followed an unprecedented wave of raids on dozens of NABU officers' homes the day before, where the pretext for searches ranged from drug trafficking accusations to car accidents from 4 years ago. The NABU chief said that some searches got violent. I showed you an article in an earlier video today that showed that there was no, like the first video that I talked about with this, that there was actually like somebody who was feeding information to the Russians. So maybe that was what was causing it. I'm just trying to show you the facts as I understand them. Okay, it closely follows an escalation, prosecution of Ukraine's best-known anti-corruption activist, an outspoken critic of Zelensky. President Zelensky is making a choice to undermine Ukrainian democratic institutions in pursuit of expanding his personal power. Now, this is commentary, and this is an editorial, and that's what they're saying, that President Zelensky is undermining Ukrainian democratic institutions in pursuit of expanding his personal power. It's an odd time to choose to do that if that's something that you were going to do. Why do it now? The attacked anti-corruption agencies have been a nuisance for the political elite, as they should be. They have investigated Zelensky's party's lawmakers and president's close associates, but just weeks ago, they went after his personal friend, then Deputy Prime Minister Oleksiy Chernyshov, making him a suspect in a land grab case. There is talk of other close associates of Zelensky that detectives were investigating. Okay, so maybe there are guys there that are somewhat on the take. They should be going after them if that is the case. But we don't know all the facts yet, so we need to suspend our judgment and just try to understand what we understand and know the difference between what we know and what we think and be able to tell the difference. In other words, they were doing exactly what they were set up for. Ukraine's anti-corruption infrastructure was set up in the years following 2013 to 2014 Euromaidan revolution. We'll come back to that 2013 number in just a little bit. Now, President Zelensky is seeking to dismantle it to protect his associates and expand his power. That's not quite true. He's not dismantling. The authority lines are running through president to chief prosecutor to that office. Under martial law, there are no elections, and perhaps more importantly, there have been no mass street protests. Many of the most politically active Ukrainians, patriotic and uncompromising, are serving on the front lines. All true. It's possible to condition Ukrainian leadership in a way that protects democracy but doesn't undermine Ukraine's defense against Russia. Okay, yeah, I mean, we don't want to do that, certainly, in the process, right? But there is one other source of oversight, the West, and it needs to use its leverage to help Ukraine stay a democracy, right? So, one of the things that Ukraine doesn't want to do is look all corrupt and then have Western countries go, you know what, we're trying to help you because you're a democracy, not because you're that. We're trying to help you because you're this. Okay, and that's what they're appealing to here. Ukraine's Western partners, the US and the EU, have been a key force pushing reluctant Ukrainian officials to carry out reforms. Using the leverage of financial aid to condition Ukrainians to move, it was a simple deal. Western aid comes in return for democratic progress. The war and having a smooth relationship with Ukraine's leadership have been made a priority. The West is reluctant to further sour it with nods of failed reforms. I don't know. I mean, you would think that if they were looking for an excuse, at least let's say America was looking for an excuse, this would be a great excuse. Like, see, they're not really, and I'll show you what Marjorie Taylor Greene has already posted. When the West is reluctant to further sour with nods of failed reforms, supporting democracy in Ukraine is a task that can wait until after the war. That seemed to be the approach. I'm not sure I quite agree with that people were thinking this way, but okay. Evidently, certain actors in Ukraine perceived it as a free pass from Washington. Now, again in bold, it's not too late for Western partners to step in. It is possible to condition Ukrainian leadership in a way that protects democracy, but doesn't undermine Ukraine's defense against Russia. Yeah, sure. I mean, they ought to thread that needle to the degree that that's possible. Military aid to Ukraine shouldn't be conditioned. The survival of Ukraine and its defenders remain the #1 priority, but it will be hard for foreign governments to find domestic support for such aid if Ukraine is allowed to slide into autocracy. I think that's very fair. The more that they get away from that, the more it's likely that it's going to be harder for partners to come alongside them, even though it's Russia being Russia. The same man who represents Ukraine's fight against Russia can't represent the destruction of Ukraine's democracy. That's fair. I mean, I don't want to see that either. Every true supporter of Ukraine and Western governments needs to signal to Ukrainian leadership that the backslide is noted and won't go without consequences. And next on the menu, independent Ukrainian media. Ukraine's democracy can still be salvaged. In peacetime, that responsibility would fall on the Ukrainian people. But today, Ukrainians are fighting and dying for Europe and the whole free world. Will the West hold the line for them? Okay, so they're calling for the West to hold Ukraine accountable and stay on a democratic path. Okay, I think this was a little harsh, but again, I'm not seeing the whole picture. I don't know what I don't know, but let me show you what was in Zelensky's. Well, before I do that, there, corruption has been a thing, right? In fact, in Servant of the People, where Zelensky made his name in season 2, the first couple of episodes, you see this weird montage where they're trying. So the storyline goes that the prime minister was corrupt, and the prime minister gets in trouble. He goes to court, and then they're trying to find an honest judge, and they go through judge like this guy. We have, Your Honor, we want to disqualify the judge. And they say, why? Well, he was the godfather of the defendant's children. Well, wait a minute, I never accepted him as godfather of my son. Well, he's out. And then we have another judge that comes in. She's disqualified. Then another judge, he's disqualified. And another judge, and the next judge is disqualified. Like, it's one thing after another, after another, after another. And that was part of their storyline. And this was like years ago. And now with that, and we know that there's been corruption, let's hear what Zelensky had to say here first before I go into anything else. So this was his evening. I said, we're going to suspend our judgment until we see what he says in the evening. And that hadn't come out yet with my last video. So scroll down a little bit. He's talking about other things. And he says one more thing. I spoke with an NABU director and SAPO prosecutor, the prosecutor general, the head of security service of Ukraine, Vasily Maluk. We discussed the various challenges, all of them. The anti-corruption infrastructure will work only without Russian influence. So it needs to be cleared of that. Now, if that's what's going on, and that is all that's going on, this doesn't seem like a bad thing, because if there's Russian influence in this independent group and you're moving it over here and you can just move that out, okay. I don't know that that's the whole story, but that's what Zelensky's indicating is the story. And there should be more justice, of course. NABU and SAPO will work. They're not being disbanded. They're being just moved under a different line of authority under the prosecutor. And it is important that the prosecutor general is determined to ensure that in Ukraine, the inevitability of punishment for those who go against the law is actually ensured. I like what I hear. I mean, as long as they're doing what they're saying, that's fine. This is what Ukraine really needs. The cases that have been lying dormant must be investigated. For years, officials who have fled Ukraine have been casually living abroad for some reason in very nice countries without legal consequences, and this is not normal. There is no rational explanation for why criminal proceedings worth billions have been hanging for years. And there's no explanation why the Russians can still get the information that they need, like it's leaking out to the Russians. Important is, without Russians, important is to have inevitability of punishment and that society really sees it. Okay, well, it sounds like it's going to be, this is a move to be more effective, not to be more corrupt, but again, time will prove that out. Now, let's talk about something else here. Marjorie Taylor Greene's already making some hay with this. Huge protests erupt in Kyiv against Ukrainian President Zelensky as he is a dictator and refuses to make a peace deal and end the war. This is not about a peace deal and ending the war. That's not what the protests are about. It's about the appearance that Zelensky is consolidating power to perhaps protect his friends, and that independent anti-corruption group is going to be somehow disbanded. And I don't think that that's what's going to happen. Good for the Ukrainian people. Throw him out of office, and America must stop funding and sending weapons, says Marjorie Taylor Greene. RT, I showed you RT or Sputnik talking about this earlier. Okay, let's talk about the corruption for real. Okay, this is 2023, and it's gone up since 2024, and it's now 2025. 36. Now, the higher the number, the better. So wait, you're only at 36? Well, yeah, but in 2013, if you scroll out, in 2013, it was at 25. It was in bad shape, right? Again, on a 100-point scale. So you're thinking, well, that's pretty darn corrupt, right? Well, where do you think they are on the map? Over here somewhere? No, that's not it at all. This is the corruption index map. And you would think, oh, 25, they must be, or 36, they must be over here. Nope. 36, they're right here, about in the center. It's not great, but where's the U.S.? The U.S. is only here at 65, and the highest is only at a 90 with Denmark. Go Denmark, right? So the United States is here. 2 columns over at the bottom is Ukraine. And then where's Russia? Russia, not on this column, not on this. Russia's 2 columns further to the right, like it's near the bottom of the pile. So there's no contest in the level of corruption between the two countries. And even when you look at it, Russia right now is at 22. Like in 2024, Russia's at number 22. Even before the Maidan Revolution, Ukraine was at 25. Ukraine was still above where Russia still is. So okay, so that's what we know about the corruption, but the protests are ongoing. We'll see more about this. More will unfold over time. And so I'm just trying to provide the facts. Tell me what you know, if you know anything or can add anything to this discussion. Is Zelensky the villain, or is he the defender of Ukraine and as far as anti-corruption measures go? Put that in the comments below. Thank you for listening to me, and make your decision and help me understand what's going on. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.